I got an opportunity to work for Nubank. When I joined, had around 60 million customers, and by the time I left, we already had 90 million customers. So I truly learned what it really means to design for scale.
Yash Piplani is a seasoned product leader and innovation strategist with over 14 years of experience in driving product development, customer identity platforms, and strategic growth. Currently, he is serving as the Global Director of Product Management at Dunnhumby. Adab Yash, the Executives podcast में आपका खुशामदीद.
Chakde Pathe. I started my career as a business analyst with G Capital and Sun Life Financial. From there, I moved to Ford Motor Company. The organization was going through a big transformation, and I gradually moved into a product management role. As a PM, I see those were really the growth years for me. And while meeting the expectations for all those customers and users, but at the same time, still staying fast, focused, and iterative.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Executives, the show where we navigate the intricate world of executive leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and personal stories of successful professionals shaping the global business landscape. I'm your host, Majid, and joining us today is Yash. Yash Piplani is a seasoned product leader and innovation strategist with over 14 years of experience in driving product development, customer identity platforms, and strategic growth. Currently, he is serving as the Global Director of Product Management at Dunnhumby. Yash has previously led product and engineering teams at Nubank, Glovo, Booking.com, and Expedia Group. So let us welcome Yash. Adab Yash, the Executives podcast में आपका खुशामदीद.
Hi, Majid. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor and a privilege to share this stage. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And Chak De Pathe.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That I should make like a reel out of just this Chuck the Pate, the executives, and then Chuck the Pate. That's going to be viral content. But thank you. I'm honored. I mean, I love listening to stories, and I love sharing the stories of highly successful and highly people who have delivered a lot of value to the world. And the thing is, these are like I believe the professionals are superheroes who don't wear capes.
Yep.
Especially finance is an industry where that happens a lot. People don't know when you tap a card what happens, like everything that goes through, right? But before we talk about the fun stuff, let's I want to give you the stage, so you can tell the listeners more about who is Yash, because I try to do justice. I try to put everything what you have been doing in 14 years together, but that's hard. So
Yeah.
the stage is all yours.
No, thank you. Thank you, Majid, for the opportunity. So, yeah, born and raised in New Delhi, India. Did my engineering from Delhi region. It was not a very difficult decision. Rather, I should say it was a very easy decision because coming from this part of India or this part of the subcontinent, right? Engineering is something which is sort of a no-brainer decision that we take. But the thing was, I was always fascinated towards numbers, which sort of drove me to do an MBA after my engineering and finance, for which I went to California, California State University, Los Angeles. I completed my MBA during a very interesting time, which was the worst financial crisis our generation has seen, at least, which was a 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. But I was fortunate enough to sort of get a job and start on the investment side and the technology side. So I started my career as a business analyst, professional career as a business analyst with G Capital and Sun Life Financial, where I worked on the credit risk system. And this is where I would say, I was first introduced to the power of data and how it is used to transform decision making in large organizations for millions of customers. From there, I moved to Ford Motor Company. I was back in India by that time. So I moved to Ford Motor Company where I worked on the products that sat at the intersection of the physical and the digital connected vehicles, as well as global unified platforms view. So the organization at that point in time, I'm talking about 2012, 2013, the organization was going through a big transformation, and I gradually moved into a product management role. And that's where the product bug really bit me. And after that, it was Expedia again in Delhi NCR region. and then Booking.com, for which I moved to Amsterdam. I think these are the two companies, the travel tech companies, where I personally got a front row seat of what world class experimentation, velocity, and customer obsession looks like. So, as a PM, I see those were really the growth years for me because I was able to understand how to scale products for thousands and millions of customers that those companies have had that point in time still. And while meeting the expectations for all those customers and users, but at the same time still staying fast, focused, and iterative. But right after that, I got an opportunity to work for Nubank, and I think that for me was a leap into an hyper growth mode because Nubank, when I joined, had somewhere around I think 60 million customers, and I'm talking about late 2021, right? And by the time I left, which is last year, April, we already had like 90 million customers. So this is where I truly learned what it really means to design for scale. And when I say design for scale, it is not just tech scale, right? But people, process, and the product scale as well. So I was part of the platform team. We built platforms that empowered the various teams in the organizations that we had to move faster in a more secure manner without reinventing the wheel each and every time. That was also a time I moved back to India for personal reasons. My wife and I, we took a decision that, hey, we should move back to India, which actually brought me to Dunnhumby as well, where I'm currently working as global director of product and platform. So I lead data orchestration platform, which includes a data and science platform as well as a proprietary engine that generates real-time insights. So here, we are solving problems around how we surface science as service, how we externalize insights through APIs, as well as managing a global team of product managers in India as well as UK and the US. So across, I think so. This has been mostly my experience, sort of maybe not as short as you would have preferred, but across, I think all these roles, one thing that has stayed constant or consistent in my belief, which is that great products sit
Mhm.
at the intersection of empathy, customer empathy, business clarity, and system thinking overall. So that's one thing I've really learned over the last 15, 16 years in my professional career. That is something which has also become part of my leadership philosophy.
True. I loved a lot of things you mentioned, but first the important question: you moved to Delhi because of the food, right? The secret
Yes.
South.
Yes. Yeah. When it comes to food, right? Delhi has the best food, undoubtedly. I mean, Berlin, I was in Berlin working for Nubank, and Berlin had great vegan food as well. I think it's a vegan capital of the world, but nothing beats Delhi when it comes to food.
I'm from Lahore, right? So Lahore, Delhi, very nearby. So I mean, we both know both the cities love food. Like you might not
Yeah.
find a doctor, but you will find something to eat, like
Yeah.
at two
Oh, that's
three.
so true. That is so true. Nihari, I'm a big non-vegetarian, mostly a chicken fan. But yeah, love Nihari. Can't really go bad with it when you go to good places in Delhi.
So the secret's out now. But I just want to add something on what you said about empathy, building products with empathy. I remember that whenever I sit down with sales team, they will say, without sales, you cannot do anything. I'm like, without a product team, you cannot sell anything. So
Yeah.
you might have the best product ready to be sold. And if you don't have a good sales team, you can just put it in the cupboard,
Yep.
like put it in the drawer and lock it away. And the same goes for the sales team. If you don't have a good product team, they might be churning out features that no one uses. No one is empathetic to the customer, right?
Yep.
So it's basically everyone needs to work as a team. There
True.
is a reason why we use the word cross-functional team all the time, right?
Yep.
But before we dive into the serious topic, I have a random, a fun thing that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
I was thinking, what should I ask? Yes, I'm not going to ask you about food because I know you're from
Okay.
Delhi. I'm not going to
Yeah.
ask you about food.
Sure.
But the question I have is, you are on the front seat where you have the plug to change the name for Monday. You can change it to anything you want. What would you call it, to so that the people like it more?
That has to be the most difficult question in the conversation. What do I rename Monday as? Okay, I would actually rename Monday as Friday, mini Friday or Friday. Friday being the day that we all look forward to. So one option would be to call it Friday, but I think given what do I really want Monday to look like? The best day of the week, right? Let's just call it the best day of the week. And the way I want to, I don't want to start it with your uh, your planning or retro meetings. I think the way I want to start Monday as is something that starts with sort of a very fun activity. Every Monday morning we do. So this is something, by the way, we used to do at Glovo. So there used to be a 10-minute, 15-minute company call, and the call will start with the most peppy hip hoppy song ever, right? So every Monday there'll be a new song chosen, and that's how the Mondays will start at Glow, and everyone used to love that, right? And it used to set the entire sort of the vibe for the entire day. I think those are some of the minor changes, if not very radical changes, I would like to bring in on Monday morning. I don't know if
So you will call it the best day and you will introduce the music thing. So everyone must start
yeah,
with something music to inspire themselves to get through the day. Because Mondays are normally brutal. Yeah. Like I remember I never preferred starting a sprint on Mondays. Every time
yeah,
I would tell them, let's start it on Wednesday, in the middle of the
true,
week. Because then Friday becomes also good for people. People are not like, oh no, we have a sprint review and then we need to prepare for sprint review and then we have the weekend. So it becomes very
yeah,
complex for people. The deployments are
yeah,
happening on Fridays, then so that's why.
yeah, yeah. Especially never start a Monday with a retrospective.
True. Product manager joke. Product manager.
Yeah,
That's true. But today we are sitting because we want to talk about leading global product innovations,
yeah,
lessons from building customer centric platforms. Would love to talk more into detail about how did you go through Nubank, Glovo, and so on.
yeah,
But let's first talk about Dunnhumby. What does Dunnhumby do? Because I don't think it's a super common name in the common
yeah.
household. So let's use that opportunity to explain to people what does Dunnhumby do.
Dunnhumby is world's first customer data science platform company. So we have existed for 25 plus years now. When this AI and machine learning was not even, a word or a terminology everyone was connected with, Dunnhumby was actually killing it that time. So that's sort of the history Dunnhumby has. But talking about the business, Dunnhumby, as I said, is a global data science company. We have a huge presence in India, but it's a London headquartered organization. So we have offices in London, India, US, a lot of other cities across the globe. So it's a global data science company that helps retailers as well as CPGs to understand and act on consumer behavior, essentially using data, right? So what essentially we do as in Dunnhumby is that we are the specialist in turning the vast amounts of retail data, such as your transaction data, your customers' data, the loyalty card activity data, etc., and we transform that data into actionable insights to improve our customer experience overall, to enable our clients optimize the pricing, to enable them to have more personalized marketing plans and essentially drive business growth. So that's what Dunnhumby does. Very very big retailers such as Walmart in the US or Tesco, they are Dunnhumby's clients. In fact, we are our parent company is also Tesco, which is a pretty known
Mhm.
retailer in the Europe.
Let's make it more interesting. Let's
Yeah.
let's make it. I mean, I understand most of the context, but we have people who don't come from data science, who don't know what is data science, and who don't understand. So now you have to explain again, Dunnhumby, but you have to explain it to a 10-year-old.
10-year-old. Okay. So let's take a very simplistic view. So now, as a 10-year-old, right? Let's go to a grocery store, right? A retailer store. So since you are in Berlin, let's talk about Rewe, right? Or Edeka, one of them, right? So we go to that store. Now we walk into that store and we see a lot of items or consumable goods placed on the shelves, right? So you see a bottle of cola, right, of a famous brand, sitting at the top of the shelf or right at the entrance of the retailer store, right? Those are the decisions. Then Humby helps retailers such as Reve or Edeka that, hey, where should you place your products or which shelf, right? How do you should go about the entire assortment, the entire range, right? What is the right pricing for that cola brand or for that granola brand or for that noodles, the Maggie, as we know very well in this part of the world, right? Where should we place all those products? If we are going with sort of a masala, right? Masala could be a condiment, but it could also go right next to where the
Mm-hmm.
Maggi is, which is a food product, right? So how we should be positioning, placing those products. That's something then Humby helps both the CPGs, which is that, the brand. Obviously I called out Maggi in this case, but the cola brands, as well as the retailers such as Reve or Edeka. At the same time, we also create loyalty programs, right, for customers. Like, why, as a customer, that 10-year-old should go to Eve or Edeka or any other retailer again and again, right? Even if that child has to walk 500 meters, 1 kilometer, or 10 kilometers, why that child or that user or that customer should move to or should go to that retailer because of the program. So that's again an area we specialize in as Dunnhumby. So those are some of the problems we solve at Dunnhumby. Hope it
Mm-hmm.
was easier to kind of
Yeah,
relate and understand.
it was better. It was good. It was good. It was good. I mean, the first definition was also very
Mm,
good. But I always see that I get questions from people. They are like, Majid, your guest mentioned this thing, but I have never heard of this, which is fine because you're an expert in the field. They are not.
yeah, no,
So they are
absolutely.
here to learn. That's why it's always I try to make it a bit more fun. But you have worked in big orgs, right?
Yeah,
Booking.com, Expedia, Glovo, Nubank. I mean, these are big names. Everyone knows that. Also, Dunnhumby, it's pretty big. Like you mentioned, it's owned by Tesco, and you have some big brands, right?
yeah.
That you work with. What were some of the most defining moments that actually shaped you as a product leader? You know, your product leadership style.
Interesting. I wouldn't say there's actually one event that sort of switched it on completely for me. There have been a lot of events in my career. So maybe I'll let me just try to put maybe two or three events together that has sort of shaped my leadership style overall. So I will start with when I was there at Ford Motor Company long ago, a culturally very rich company, culturally very rich company, and that's where one of our coaches introduced me to a book known as Drive by Daniel Pink, I believe, right? And that's where I, for the first time, I understood the concept of mastery, autonomy, purpose, right? That sort of builds a high performing teams. And since then, those mastery, autonomy, purpose, those principles have become a central part of how I build teams, right? Which is giving people space to own problems, enabling them to grow their craft, become a better person, become a better professional, become a better product manager than they were, right? And also helping them connect to meaningful outcomes at the company level so that we know what we are trying to achieve and what the impact of this will be for the organization, for the business, for the customers, for everyone around us, right? So that's something which added to my leadership philosophy or style. And when I moved to Expedia, so firstly, I've been fortunate enough to work with so many brilliant leaders, right? Whether it was Ford Motor Company, Expedia, Booking, or Nubank. I mean, I can name, but just in the interest of time, I've just been fortunate, and there's a lot of gratitude I have for the opportunities due to which I was able to work with so many great leaders. So when I was talking about in my stay at Expedia, I worked with a leader, who really showed me what empathetic style of leadership looks like. And that sort of also, resonated with me a lot and has become a cornerstone of my leadership style overall, which is I have found that truly listening, understanding your individual motivations, creating that psychological safe environment around you, it it not just unlocks performance, but it builds a trust, which is a foundational element for anything that we do around us. That's another thing I learned. And then eventually, when I started mentoring product managers, right, there's another element I learned in that journey, which was I figured that the best product managers weren't always the ones with the best roadmaps, but they were the ones who were deeply self-aware. They were always continuously and consistently learning, and they were also able to operate at multiple attitudes or altitudes rather, right? So they were able to sort of zoom in for the operational excellence, but they were also able to kind of zoom out for the strategic clarity. That realization also shifted a bit of my leadership style from just being purely directional to being more system thinking, right? So it made me a more of a system thinker, which is how different parts of the system in the organization are interconnected. How, if I'm going to make a change on
Mm-hmm.
one part of the system, will that eventually lead to multiple repercussions into the other systems, into the organization goals, etc. So I think that has also helped me in crafting my own leadership style. I think these are a couple of moments that have kind of defined myself. I'm still learning, it's still day one, but so far those are the few events I would call out.
That reminds me of one of the things my mentor said to me, Majid, the day you stop learning is the day you should prepare for your downfall.
Hmm.
Because if you stop learning any day, you
Yeah.
basically will stop being at the edge. You will stop understanding what's happening in the tech. So I have a goal for myself that I'm every week I'll try a new tool, even though if it's not relevant, for me, I still try a tool because that opens up my mind, that opens up my perspective. And I think it's always important to learn what you mentioned, learning and then being empathetic to customers, to people, which resonates with me as well. I mean, I whenever I go to my customer, I'm like, how can I get the wow from them? The wow is
Yeah.
what I'm looking for, or the
Right.
the excitement, the sheer satisfaction that they're like, oh yes, this is exactly what we wanted, right? So
Yeah.
everything is aligned with what you're saying, completely
Yeah.
100%,
Uh,
maybe 200%.
Absolutely, no, I totally agree on that point. I think learning is key. Customer centricity, of course, right? You have to make sure as product managers you are building elements that are obviously table stakes, but also can delight your customers and users. So completely on point.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing you mentioned that's also very, very important is about that defines for me between a good leader and a leader who's not good, a bad leader. I'm going to say it out loud. If you just know what your team is working on and what are the repercussions of the team's work on other teams, you're a good person. You
Yep.
know how can you support other teams, how can you actually improve the production of your team, how can you support them to grow more. But if you don't even know what the other
Yeah.
teams are working on, then you have a problem. Then you will have bad data structures, you will have bad performances. And we have seen startups which basically did that, right?
Yep.
Where they built huge millions of euros, but then they had a problem with the basic data structure. One team was using something else, the other team was using something else, and then they ended up like they actually had to build teams for just like sorting out the data platform. And
Yep.
how did they do it building another layer on top,
Yeah.
data orchestration, which was more costed. Why not have a data team in the beginning which
Yeah.
does the architecture for you, and then this architecture is used across platforms?
Yeah.
So I think that's also, that for me personally defines between a good leader, so who thinks about the organization. Because if you think of the organization grows, the team grows,
Yep.
you grow,
Absolutely.
the people grow, and everyone stays there. Then you can give more salaries, you can give them more benefits, etc., etc. I mean, if someone tells me I just work for fun, I wouldn't believe it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna believe it because I need to pay my bills.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the things. Maybe we'll talk about this in one of the conversations today. But that's one of the things I deeply look forward to when I'm hiring product managers, right? Because it's very easy for us to be attached to our products, uh, if we have, especially if we have built it. But we always, as product managers, we have to see if that product is still adding value to the company or not, or to the organization, right? If it's still solving the right problems. So yeah, completely. That's a very good point, Majid.
And when you lead, like from this, I would like to talk about the remote teams, right? When you're building, not just remote teams, when you're building distributed product teams,
Hmm.
right? Maybe in one geolocation or maybe different geolocations, it comes with unique challenges,
Yeah.
right? How do you build team cohesion and maintain alignment across different regions? Because this, for me, is continuation of what you were just mentioning.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. True. And this, I think, yeah, this, it has a lot of factors because for me, when you're working with different, you're a globally distributed team, for example, right? You are dealing with different cultures most of the time. So what what is really needed is firstly you have to be you have to be more aware and acknowledge the cultural differences that exist because at the end what happens is culture is is like an iceberg. What we see on the surface, what do you see on the surface, right? You see on the surface how somebody is behaving, what their rituals are, what the language is, how they are wearing, right, the dress codes. It's a very small part of the whole culture piece because beneath that waterline essentially is where lies a much larger chunk which is often invisible. you know Things like your values, your beliefs, assumptions, norms, attitudes. Those are the things that truly define the behavior. So I think as leaders, when you are working in a globally distributed team, what I was trying to say is you have to be more aware and acknowledge all these differences. I personally have been fortunate to, have lived and worked across North America, Europe, and of course Asia. But one thing I've learned is the geography changes everything. How people communicate, how they make decisions, and how even they interpret feedback, right? It varies based on the location, based on the geography. So building cohesion isn't just about regular stand-ups or alignment meetings, bi-weekly touch points with your team, but it's more about creating shared culture while still respecting local nuances. So for me, the strategy or the sort of method that I follow is first, I do tend to over communicate with intention. So I never assume that alignment is happening unless we have explicitly talked about why behind the what, right? So we make sure that we are spending enough time on that communication. We are over communicating why we are prioritizing something, why we are building something, and what we are building. We also focus a lot on the asynchronous tools like Teams, Slack if the companies use, or Confluences or Notion if the companies use, and more structured rituals, right? Like product reviews or the weekly check-ins. So they essentially help to bring everyone in sync, no matter what's their time zone. So over communication with the right intention, I think that's one of the things I personally do. The other thing that I personally do, which I also enjoy doing, is building personal relationships across borders. So it sounds simple, but in my experience, what I have found that even a 30-minute coffee chat with a teammate in Sao Paulo when I was working with Nubank or London now with Dunnhumby, it can actually prevent weeks of misalignment down the road. I'm not saying everything will be perfect, but at least that's you have to be deliberate, you have to be intentional about those building personal relationships. What will happen is when you are being more deliberate and intentional, these moments will create empathy. At times, you'll understand other person's point of view, why they are reacting in the way they are reacting, which is again the bedrock of any high performing distributed team. That's one of the things I do. And lastly, one thing I can think of is that I always invest in the local leadership. So when leading global teams, you can't be the single point of connection, right? So I'm based in India. I have PMs in India. I have PMs in the UK. Again, globally, even within UK, they are distributed. And then we have a team in US as well, right? So my job as a leader is to ensure that I am empowered those regional PMs or the leads that we have with enough context and autonomy, and that way decision making is faster. The teams all also feel ownership, and I kind of get out of the way so that they feel that they're executing their own roadmap and not somebody else's roadmap. So those are some of the
Mhm.
practices or behaviors I usually try to inculcate in my teams.
All of this is very important. Like sometimes, just like what I tend to do sometimes is I would just let the team talk to each other and I would not go join the meeting. I
Yeah,
would be the one organizing the meeting and I would not join the meeting. And then they would be saying, "Hey, Majid, you're not." I'm like, "No, no, this is for you guys to talk to each other,
yeah,
just to get to know each other, ice break the ice, talk to each other, and
uh,
like forget there is me right now. Like don't think about me. Like just make it a comfortable space for yourself, because then they start sharing ideas, and then when you go to them again next time,
yeah.
they basically just blow up with ideas because they start trusting each other. They're like, oh no, this person is not there to take my position, but this guy is together with me in the team.
Yeah, no, and that's very well put, Majid, because as a leader, you don't have to be there in every conversation, in every meeting, right? So you have to kind of create an environment where people trust each other, people trust that they can, they have full autonomy to take decisions. Obviously, at the same time, everyone is responsible, but they also know that they have your back as a leader, right? And not feeling sort of micromanaged at the same time. So yeah, I think that's nicely put, and that's what differentiates between, as you said at the beginning, a good leader versus not versus maybe a great leader, right? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's good. But now when you have so many product managers, that means you're working at scale, correct? For
Yeah,
example, let's I'm going to use the example from Nubank that you mentioned,
yeah,
from 60 million people to 90 million customers,
yeah,
right? So that's not a small jump. 30 million is the population of a few countries, right?
yeah,
So it's a big number for onboarding people, because also considering it's a bank, the regulations, the financial processes, and the how you store
yeah,
the data, everything is complex, you know. So what were the biggest challenges? You know, I just gave Nubank as an
yeah.
example. uh, so I would love to understand what were the biggest challenges in building and managing platforms at that scale, because it sounds easy to say 60 million, 90 million, but it's not. It's really, I
Yeah,
think, when you start thinking of the number of data points you have,
yeah.
maybe first touch upon that, like the data points, to explain to people
Sure.
why am I my eyes like all opened up.
You talked about Nubank, right? So Nubank, for me personally, my the eyes just light up when we talk about Nubank. So that has to be like one of the best organizations that I've worked with. I mean, I've been fortunate to work with some of the greatest organizations we have. Um, Great leaders, great concern for the employees, people centric, customer centric. But Nubank, for me, has been one of the an outlier, if we can call that. So when I joined, as we were talking about, when I joined, we were 60, around, I think, 60 million. When I left last year, April, 90 million. So company has been on a hyper growth chart. The company deliberately invested in platforms because when you're operating at that scale, 90 million customers, um, you as an organization have to be clear that one thing is not being developed 10 times, right? And how different teams are going to come together and enable the business outcome, the customer goals, and solving for the right problems. So at that scale, also what happens is platforms stop being just technical constructs, and they also become more of a cultural and organizational muscles. Three major themes that defined our journey at Nubank through platformization. If I just use this kind of a forum to talk about the impact platforms created to manage that scale at Nubank, was handling specificity. So what happens is we with 90 million customers across Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, each market would have their different regulatory nuances, right? Their legal regulatory nuances, different customer behavior differences, the infrastructural variability will also be there. So you will always have a temptation to hard code for each use case, which companies also do. Nubank also did when they started, right? But when you are operating at that scale, if you continue to follow the old habits, you will end up creating a system which is more brittle. So at Nubank, what we did, leaned more on a domain-driven design and platform API concept, which created extensible modules where each business line could just plug in their local rules while the platform retained the ownership and the control over the core logic. So, for instance, uh, risk rules for credit cards differ by country, but the underlying identity verification process systems or the scoring systems, they can be standardized and you can create platforms on that. So I manage customer identity platforms at Nubank. We supported all the customers in all the regions. It was not very specific to like Brazil, Colombia, or Mexico. So handling those specificity, abstracting it out, and mapping it with the organizational structure is one thing that Nubank did remarkably well. And we can talk about the org structure and how that org structure enabled Nubank to really achieve that. The the other thing which Nubank did really well was, because tech at that scale isn't just code, it's organization design. And this is maybe where I was sort of getting into. We structured ourselves at Nubank around three pillars. We created global markets, global products, and
Mhm.
global platforms. So, and obviously we had a corporate function as well, but largely we divided the tech and product teams across these three pillars: markets, products, and platforms. Each market team was responsible to drive customer understanding and the local execution piece of it. The product organization, they focused on sort of the domain ownership, and the platform organization, they ensured that we are not building the same thing 10 times, as I called out in the beginning. And what we did, we built a strong, as part of it, we built a very strong product management, tech product management culture in the company. We borrowed the best from the industry. You talk about one pagers to brainstorm on an idea, six pagers for an annual strategy from Amazon, or the OKR concept, where it was not just sort of a concept, but it was diligently followed by each and every team. The goals cascaded from the business unit level to the team level, and we had regular product reviews, which was attended by the C-level executives as well. So these rituals overall, they helped us create alignment. It helped us surface the duplication hotspots and just have honest conversations around priorities. So I think these are a couple of things that Nubank really did well. Um, there are a couple of other things that come to my mind, like company invested a lot in the front end infra scalability when the new bank migrated to Flutter as a company wide initiative, which sort of mattered a lot to support 90 million customers across Android and iOS at rapid velocity. So on the back end, they invested a lot on resiliency, observability, the distributed tracing, etc. So a lot of investments were also done on the platforms to ensure that we are ready for that 100 million customers, because company always had that the 100 million mark as a north star. So any company event that you will attend, right? David Felice, who is the founder CEO of Nubank, he will often talk about, this is our goal, this is where we are today, and this is how we're going to get there. So every company was sort of marching behind him and the company to achieve that goal together. So I think that was something which was pretty unique about Nubank. I've seen flavors of this being done in different companies that I've worked with, like Booking.com, Expedia, Dunnhumby as well. But Nubank was very, very different in that sense. There was that secret
Mhm.
sauce at Nubank, which is hard to decode.
You mentioned about the organizational structure,
Yeah.
right? Because I remember I was consulting an organization. They had their structure was very, for me, very how should I put it? It was very weird.
Hmm.
I did never understood. A VP was reporting to a director at one point, and then there was a director reporting to a VP. Then a VP was reporting to a head of. A head of was reporting to, I don't know, a team lead. It was very, very weird for me. I was like, I really don't understand. How do you really work? How is the
Yeah.
structure like? Because if I were to say that I want to understand who's the budget owner, right, of this particular unit, I couldn't get one answer. And I'm just talking about product org, I'm
Yep.
not talking about anything else. Like the organization had a very messy, very chaotic structure. I mean, they were a huge organization. They made over a billion, but I mean, the cost was that they were in lawsuits, they had
Oh,
issues, they had so many problems that customers were not happy. Customers were asking for, hey, can you change our bank accounts? And they didn't change it. So imagine you were paying for their service, they were charging your old bank account, and then you close the bank account because you don't need it anymore or something, and you
ah,
told them that, hey, update my bank account, and then they never did it. And then they would send you a legal notice that, hey, you know what, yes, you didn't pay us the money because we are not able to take the money. And you're like, dude, I informed you before, right?
yeah.
So I think when I talked with them and I was sitting with the CPO, I was like, dude, I have a feeling your C level is like, the number of C level you have first is way too much for me. I don't know if an intern could also be a C level at your organization. It was that bad.
Oh, okay.
And the second thing I realized with them was, I was like, your C level is not aligned. You say to me the priority zero of the organization is
Yeah.
what the CEO said. I'm like, cool. Then it should be that. We don't need to argue about it. But then you're a director of a team comes to his team, and your priority zero is building, I don't know, the platform, identity platform, for example. So how do you make sure that the priority is the same? So the problem is not starting at the bottom, because the C level would dump it on the bottom. Like, yeah, it's the product managers who are not doing a good job. But for me, it's the leadership, right, that's not doing a good job. And this is aligned with what you also just
Yeah.
mentioned, that, hey, we need to bring it from top to bottom, that yes, there are people, brilliant people, who are able to deliver, but they are not there to set the strategy. They are there to get the stuff running up, functional, high quality, and so on. Correct.
Yeah, no, correct. That's correct. And I think one clarification I will add, right? It's important to have a north star, right? A vision that you really want to be, and have different KPIs to achieve it, which is, you know, there has to be goals created at the top, but it has to be bottom up as well, right? Because there'll be a lot of ideas. Like, for example, one of the metrics that we used to track at Nubank was active customers, right? So our goal is to be the best, to be the most loved, etc., etc., and the biggest as well, right? Biggest in terms of the active customers. Now, if I have ideas that, hey, uh, I can introduce this new product, which is maybe lending insurance, which will help us achieve that company-wide goal. That's something I can create in a bottom up manner. So I don't have to wait for an exec team to tell me. Similarly, my platform, one of the platforms that I managed at Nubank, it was directly connected to be the most one of the KPIs that we have at the company level is to become the most cost efficient or operationally excellent company or bank in the world, right? So for me, as a platform team, we identified a problem around storing the non-personal data. We had like 50, 60 services in the company writing, reading data. And we were like, this is causing a lot of efficiency as well as delays in launching different products or different workflows. So why don't we just create one platform that will become a source of truth for a personal data? So that was more of a bottom up approach that we implemented in this case. So I think it has to be both, right? You need to get clear goals from the top, what we really want to achieve as an organization. But the ideas generation, how we're going to support those goals, what we really should be building, etc., those can also flow or should also flow from bottom as well, if that helps.
True,
Yeah.
true, true. I mean, I have seen. I don't remember which customer was it, but I remember there was a team, they were trying to fix a bug. The bug came from the product manager. The customer team got a call, and then the product manager was made aware, and the bug was around. If they didn't solve it, they would not get around 2.1 million euros.
Oh, okay.
Like just one
Wow.
bug, 2.1 million euros.
Yeah.
So, and they were working on it. They knew the bug, they were working on it. And then suddenly the product manager, I remember I was sitting with him, and starts getting calls from everyone, vice president, this, vice president, that, C level, this, director, this, blah, 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 blah. He got more than, he got more than
Hell,
30 calls from 30 different, like,
my God.
big people in that organization,
Oh.
that there is a new bug. I said, dude, this bug better be at least 50, 60 million euros. At least. because the amount of calls you are getting, this, it has to be that critical. And he said, yeah, let's look at it. And then we got on the actual person who was responsible for the bug. It was 4,000 euros.
No.
Why was it important? Because the CEO said it's important.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Urgent and
imagine the
important, right?
product.
Differentiating between what's
Yeah.
urgent and what's important is a key.
But the
Yeah.
worst part was that the product manager was forced to stop working on the 2.1 million euro bug
Yeah.
and work on the 4,000 euro bug.
Happens. Yeah.
I was like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. And
Hmm.
I made like, I said it to the director also, the one I was working with. I said, dude, this was a horrible, horrible thing. Why can't you say no to the CEO? Yes, he's the founder. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that whatever shit he brings is the thing we need to
Yeah.
work on right
Yeah.
now.
And Majid, you know what? This is what separates good and great organizations. So the organizations, that largely I've been part of, they have been they have been very open organizations. So in those organizations, yes, there can be a directive mandate coming from a CEO that, hey, let's do that. But as product leaders, we were always empowered to kind of challenge back with the right data points, right? I mean, if you don't have any data points and you're just challenging back for the sake of it, then it's going to backfire, of course, right? But if you have the right data points, you have the right hypothesis on why you're proposing something that you're proposing. I was, again, as I said, right, was lucky enough to work in the organizations where we can actually do that and push back the executives as well. And they were also very open-minded to kind of look at the data, look at the impact, and agree or sort of disagree based on the outcome. So, but yeah, that's what separates the good and great organizations, organizations that end up becoming something like Nubank, and organizations that fizzle out, as a lot of startups do in today's time.
Mhm. I mean, I would add the third category, horrible organizations. Like, I would say it out loud, like, yeah, toxic, bad, and pathetic organizations. So I would say it. Good organizations, I have seen great organizations and good, and I've also seen like
Yeah.
bad organizations. Like, let's agree to that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they are. It's a mixed bag out there. Absolutely. Um, I
Mhm.
think I'm gonna become a politician after answering this question.
I mean, aren't leaders a little bit political? Aren't they? But now, coming back to the topic, because I would love to understand also about, because you work with a lot of data, like a lot of data.
Hmm.
So oftentimes there is the word that people say, data driven, and there is another word which is called data informed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how do you approach basically taking decisions based on the data you have, especially considering the amount of data, right? Like you just explained as well, like you have a lot of data about customers, like, just again talking about Nubank. I'm not saying that you have personal access to that, but you have the name, the bank account,
Yeah.
the transactions, the date of birth, address, blah 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 blah. It's a lot of data points, right? So how do you use that to basically, when considering you have so much volume of data?
Interesting. That's a great question, by the way, right? Because there are different ways you will use data. You can use it both quantitatively, qualitatively. For me, those are ways I firstly differentiate. But I think data driven, just because you talked about data driven decision making, and then I talked about companies like Expedia, Booking, Nubank, where experimentation is uh, like hundreds of or dozens of A/B tests are running like every day, and you're making data-driven decisions based on the statistic significance of the inputs that you are seeing, right? So, but for me personally, the data-driven decision making isn't just about having dashboards or metrics. It's more about having a mindset of curiosity and accountability. So, what I really mean over here is, um, when you're working with large volumes of customer data. So, I'll go back to maybe an example from Dunnhumby or Nubank. So, when you're working with large volumes of customer data, like we do, right? Most of us do. The first step for me personally is always about asking questions such as, what are we really trying to learn? Right? If you're not clear on what you're trying to learn, what the end state looks like, what decisions are we trying to influence, you will actually be drowned in so much noise, right? You'll not get any meaningful outcome from that. So it's very important. The first step for me, it's usually be very clear in my head, have that clarity on what we are trying to learn and what decisions we are trying to influence. Secondly, it's also, since I talked about quantitative and qualitative, it's also about striking the right balance between very laborious or rigorous data activity, data analysis activity, because you can easily feel paralyzed by the sheer volume of the data. So one of the very simple frameworks I use in this case is this data helping us to build any confidence, or is it just a confirmation that we are not doing anything bad? For example, if we are testing uh, the concurrency on our platforms, for example, right? We know that the volume that we have is, let's say, 100 million customers, and concurrency is somewhere, let's say, 10% of the overall customer, which is 10 million, right? So if we are testing for concurrency, are we testing 50 million concurrent users just to get some confirmation? Or are we really being very pragmatic that, yes, we're going to test for like 10 million customers or 15 million customers, because that's going to help us build confidence in what we are, where we are today and where we want to be future. So just having that clarity on if you're doing it for confidence or if you're doing it for confirmation, it's very important. That's a framework I usually use. And finally, the context matters a lot. The same customer behavior can mean different things across different markets, across different segments, and even time horizons. So when I work with data with my teams, we really focus on kind of marrying these quantitative signals with qualitative insights. Doing interviews with the users. For us, mostly it's internal users, but also listening to the external users, using a lot of user research data, or talking with the client leads, who are actually talking to the end customer, so getting insights from them. That's sort of what I usually lean on. So in summary, what I think, it's more of a combination of being intentional, cross-functional in how we use data. Because good questions usually wouldn't come from more data; they would come from better interpretation of that data.
We talked a lot about like data driven, and I mean it's important for people to understand that you have a lot of data. What do you want to do with it? Like you rightly mentioned, but you as a hiring person, right? You have hired so many product managers, designers, and product teams and so on. What do you look for when hiring product managers, and how do you mentor them? Because I think I have gotten this question so many times, Majid. Either we are going to become a leader or we want to be a leader. So how should we hire people? How should we
Yeah,
hire product managers and so on?
yeah. A question which is very close to my heart as well. Um, because I belong to this family, the product management family, and also because I believe in investing in people, and I enjoy uh, seeing them elevated and growing into their careers. So for me personally, right, if we just go back to the foundations. Product managers are responsible to drive focus and clarity for their teams, right? So just to start with this foundation, one of the foundations, I personally look for people who have clarity of thought completely. They have empathy and they have a bias to action. So what I mean, a PM, to be very, just to simplify this, a PM, a good PM, or a strong PM should be able to break down a complex problem or an ambiguous problem into smaller, crisp decisions, in my opinion, right? But more importantly, they should also have an empathy to understand users deeply, right? They should have an empathy to work cross-functionally, or the maturity to work cross-functionally in a diverse team to align everyone towards a common goal. And finally, when I say bias to action, what I mean, they should have that constant energy to keep pushing, things forward even when the things get tough, because not every day will look same. You will have tough days, you'll have good days, you'll have worse days. So how as a product leader, product manager, you continue to push your teams, you continue to push the charter forward in that environment, I think is a key. It takes a lot on you. And secondly, I think I also value product sense and curiosity, not in terms of how to build, but asking why we are building something in the first place and for whom, right? Who's your customer? Who you're
Mm.
keeping in, how you're keeping out is very important. And because I come from a platform and data products background, there's a nuance to it, which is where I pay special attention to PMs who can actually balance short term delivery versus long term thinking as well. So delivering short term wins is very important, but being a platform product leader, product manager, or data product manager, you also have to think through 5 years down the line, 3 4 5 years down the line. So for this, one of the frameworks that I personally have learned and also use is 50-50-50. How you think about next 50 days, next 50 weeks, and then next 50 months, right? So that sort of translates to 4 or 5 years
Mm.
horizon as well. So those are some of the things I usually look forward to when I'm hiring product people in my teams.
And now, because this is connected with how do you, as a leader, right, product leader, empower the same people you just hired to take ownership of their work and make impactful decision? Because let's be honest, you cannot take 100 decisions a
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
because there are only 8 hours that you work, or maybe 10, 12. But there is only a certain number of work that you can do.
yeah.
That's why you hire a team, so they can do more work. So how do you basically empower your team?
Oh, yeah, cool. So I think this goes back to one of the questions we talked about, right? The autonomy, mastery, purpose, something which is part of my leadership philosophy. But in all honesty, I believe that the real ownership starts when people feel trusted and they are connected to the why behind the work. And I'm not saying just for this podcast, but I have seen this coming into action in different organizations that I've worked with, different teams where uh, we didn't have trust, we were not connected with the why behind the work. We delivered, but we delivered suboptimal outcomes, right? So
Hmm.
it's very important to not just be aligned with what and how, but also why you're doing it, and also there has to be a trust-based environment into the team, which is what I firmly believe in. I also talked about how one of the things that I deeply care about is how I give my teams full autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's, I think, a kind of a lever I use to empower my teams. What that would mean in reality is one thing I try to do is give them clarity without control, right? So it doesn't look like I am controlling. I'm kind of limiting them in any shape or form. So I focus on setting clear outcomes, right? But I
Hmm.
don't set those outcomes in a way that they sound prescriptive. They sound as a detailed instructions. Do one, two, three, four, five, right? So that's the sort of a style I have, setting the clear outcomes and then just get out of the way. So because I believe that when teams know the impact that they're driving, right, they naturally start making smarter and more bolder decisions. So that's something I do. What else? What else? I think that's mostly. And yeah, one thing I think I would call out is I build rituals around feedback and reflection. So whether it is retro moments or your skip level check-ins or even just shout outs, we call it well done's at Dunnhumby. We used to have something different in Nubank, but those touch points, those actions, they usually reinforce that your voice really matters to us, your voice really matters to the team, your voice really matters to me, and your judgment is valued. And you know when you say something, you will be heard. So giving that feeling to the team members sort of create that sense of empowerment, sort of gives them the right context, gives them consistent signals throughout, that yes, you got this. So I think those are some of the
Hmm.
practices I usually adopt in my operational.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. That's cool because we are also running out of time. I have one final question. In your 14 years, there are these moments which at that time seem very stressful, right?
Hmm.
Very, very stressed. You're like, oh, no, no, what are we going to do? Are we going to get? But now when you think about it, you laugh,
Yeah.
even when you came out of it, you were like, oh, this was the problem all along. So would love to hear one story. You don't need to tell any names. You don't need to tell which company was it.
Yeah.
Just a story that you find really hilarious.
That I find really hilarious. Or maybe a story that I learned something from. Do we want to end on a humor note?
I would like a humor note
Okay.
because there is we. I think the audience has learned a lot already.
Okay, cool. So, one thing. Okay, so yeah, you have put me on the spot for this, an hilarious incident. I think they have been,
Bam.
yeah, I think they have been a few personal. You know, when I had joined Expedia, we went on a personal team trip, and something happened. I'll maybe not share those details, but I think I'll share an incident that might have happened with a lot of people. So I'm just trying to say, be safe over here. So what happens is I once, just like a lot of people, I once forgot to mute myself during an important call with my team, right? And right then, the delivery person, the courier person arrived, right? Rang the bell, and what followed was sort of a full blown argument. I'm having an argument in my local language, uh, about the one time password thing because they require like in India now they require one time password. So I was having an argument with that delivery person, like, why do you need that environment OTP now? I can give it to you later because I was on a call, etc. By the time I got back, right, the chat was filled with laughing emojis and sort of a new nickname for me, which was OTP Warrior, right? So I I was like they didn't understand anything, but we had one person because it was sort of a global call. So most of the people didn't understand because I was having a conversation in my local language, but there were a couple of people who were obviously could understand my language, and they translated that, hey, this is what Yash is doing right now. And I think maybe I was pretty loud that time, uh, having that conversation. So yeah, I got a nickname for some time, and then after that everyone forgot. um, but safe to say, I make sure that I'm triple checking, not even double checking. I'm triple checking my mute button since then, every time I, go for a BRB break, sort of a thing. But yeah, that's one incident I recall now.
That's a good one. That's a very good one. It reminds me of one of my. I was. It happened with me as well, but I remembered one of the incident that happened with one of the team members. So, his daughter walks in. I think she was like 4, 3, 4, super young.
Yeah.
So she runs in and he just says like BRB. Normally he didn't turn off the camera, but because we knew that he has kids, so it was fine.
Hmm.
He forgot to mute, and his daughter says the following: "Daddy, I don't like mommy anymore because she doesn't let me eat chocolate."
Okay, that does hasn't happened with me yet because my daughter, she is not very vocal yet, but I'm sure it's gonna happen. But I'll still make sure that I'm always muted uh, when that
That
conversation
was
happens.
hilarious. Everyone was laughing. Like everyone was laughing.
Yeah.
He didn't realize till he came back. It was like the chat was blown up with like gifs and so on. Like, and we literally made like a poster of him.
Uh,
Like, my daddy is the best. He lets me have chocolate.
I think my daughter is gonna tell me, Dad, I don't like you anymore because you're always in meetings. I think that's what she's gonna tell me soon. So something I have to be careful with. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a
No,
good
no,
one.
but but this was super cool. But thank you so much. This was super fun today. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. Yes, thank you so much. This was also insightful and fun, like I mentioned. Is there something you would like to say quickly as a closing remark for the people who stayed with us till now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Firstly, thank you so much, Majid, for having me here. It has been an honor. It has been a privilege, to share the stage with you. I've been following your content for a long, long time. Like, from having Carlos onto this forum, from product school to leaders across the globe. So you have a pretty good mix of the people that you have had good conversations. So there's a lot that I've learned from your podcast, and I never knew that I'll get an opportunity to feature in one of your episodes. So firstly, thank you so much for having that trust in me, and I personally enjoyed uh, this time with you. Good conversations. Definitely you put me on spot a few times, but yeah, I don't hate you for that. So thank you, and I hope that it's not the end of our conversation; it's just the start of our conversation. We'll stay connected. Um, because there's a lot we can actually learn through your podcast, through this medium, through the conversations, the continued conversations that we'll have hopefully in the future as well. So thank you once again, and thank you for everyone who has listened, or still listening to this podcast. Please feel free to reach out to Majid or to me if you have any questions through all the tags that we're going to be adding onto this podcast. But thank you once again. It's all gratitude to be part of this conversation.
Thank you once again. But if you want to connect with Yash, his LinkedIn would be mentioned down into the description. So connect with him. He's super hilarious. I think this is the second or third time I'm talking with him. It's always I end up the call with a sort of a jolly mood, like with a very happy mind, and I'm very fresh. So with that, I would like to also thank our listeners for tuning into the executives this week. If you found this episode valuable, do not forget to subscribe, comment, or share it with your network. Until next time, this is Majid signing off.